What happens when a discarded alien girl meets the one human who refuses to walk away? Welcome to Beyond the Stars, where love defies protocol and second chances change galaxies. In tonight's story, follow Rhett Carson, a war-hardened Terran soldier, as he discovers a forgotten Navaran girl left to die and makes a choice that will ignite a revolution, spark a bond beyond species, and challenge the laws of two worlds. If you love emotional sci-fi with heart, you're in the right place. Hit subscribe, buckle in, and let's journey to the edge of possibility together. Chapter 1, The Outcast. The twin sons of Elysium-9 beat down on the desolate outskirts of the old Navaran settlement, turning every surface into a furnace and filling the air with a shimmering haze. The once gleaming buildings now stood like skeletal teeth jutting out from the cracked ground, their walls dulled by decades of abandonment and storms of iron dust. Rhett Carson wiped the sweat from his brow, his fingers leaving streaks across his tan skin. His combat armor, though lightweight and breathable, clung hot against him. Years of use had turned it into a patched-up relic, scarred, scorched, and stitched with stories no one asked to hear. His muscles rippled beneath the plates, the product of a life lived in war zones and forgotten fringes. He adjusted the supply pack over his back with a grunt and kept moving, scanning the terrain. This was supposed to be a routine sweep. Scout the edges of the derelict mining outpost for any salvageable tech before returning to the human embassy compound. Bureaucratic work, the kind assigned to veterans they didn't know what to do with. "Goddamn heat," he muttered, squinting into the horizon. Then, movement. Just a flicker, barely perceptible, near a pile of crumbled concrete and twisted steel. Rhett froze, instincts from years in the Terran Marine Corps kicking in like second nature. His hand slid to the pulse pistol at his hip, and he crouched low, eyes sweeping the ruins with lethal precision. What he found wasn't a threat. Nestled in the shadow of a crumbling wall was a figure, frail and curled in on itself. A girl. No, a Navaran. Her violet skin, usually vibrant in the species, was dulled and blotched with bruises. Her long black hair was tangled and half covered her face, which tilted toward him with the slightest motion. She wore a threadbare beige tank top and torn utility shorts. Her limbs were thin, too thin, and she was strapped into a rusted wheelchair with parts that looked scavenged from different centuries. She tried to shrink back as he approached, but her body barely responded. Her eyes, almond-shaped, and a striking shade of silver, met his, with silent pleading. Rhett holstered his weapon slowly. "What the hell happened to you?" he asked, keeping his voice low. The girl licked her cracked lips and spoke in the common trade tongue, her voice raspy. "Family, left, burden." She gestured vaguely to her legs, which lay limp across the cracked footrests of the chair. "Accident. In mines. No use now." Rhett's stomach clenched. He'd seen plenty across the galaxy, combat horrors, famine zones, genocide. But abandonment like this? Someone left to die slowly because they could no longer contribute? That was a special kind of cruelty. "They just left you here to rot?" he asked, incredulous. She nodded once, the movement slight. Something snapped in him. Not in anger, though it was there, but in decision. Clear, immediate, and final. Rhett stood to his full height. "Humans don't leave their own behind," he said flatly, "and I'm not leaving you either." She blinked as if uncertain whether she'd heard correctly. He stepped behind her chair. "What's your name?" "Syrah. I'm Rhett." "Rhett Carson," he said, as he grasped the handles of her chair. "You're coming with me." She didn't speak, didn't resist, only leaned back as the old chair creaked beneath her weight, a breath leaving her lips like she'd been holding it for years. As they moved away from the desolate ruins, the suns casting long shadows behind them, neither of them could know that a single act of compassion would become the spark for something far greater. Something that would ripple across stars and species alike. Back at the perimeter of the settlement, Rhett keyed in his clearance code at the embassy gate. The armed guard on duty glanced at him with faint amusement. "You pick up a stray, Carson?" the man asked, chewing on something synthetic and awful smelling. "Humanitarian emergency," Rhett replied without stopping. The guard shrugged and waved him through. "Your circus, man." Inside the human diplomatic compound, Rhett brought her to his quarters, small, functional, and Spartan as hell. A single bed, water filtration, storage locker, and zero privacy. It's not much, he said, setting down his gear, but it's secure and it has clean water. Sierra's eyes flicked around the room, taking in everything. She looked like a cornered animal memorizing escape routes. Why, she asked, her voice steadier after a sip of water. Why help me? Navarons, not friends of humans. Rhett paused while unstrapping his armor. Because nobody deserves to be abandoned like garbage. He moved to the med kit, pulled it out, and knelt beside her. May I, he asked, gesturing to her injured arms. She hesitated, then nodded. As his rough hands gently cleaned her bruises, she stared at him like he was a creature from a story she'd never believed in. You were military, she said, watching the practiced way he handled the gauze. Still am, technically. Her lips moved silently, trying to form words. When she finally whispered, thank you, Rhett didn't respond. But for the first time in a long time, something in him stirred, like an engine turned over in a ship. Long thought dead. Chapter 2. A Refuge of Steel. The embassy compound on Elysium 9 wasn't designed for comfort. It was built for function. Gray walls, reinforced doors, security nodes in every corridor. But for Sarah, the single-room quarters of Rhett Carson may as well have been a palace. It was the first space in weeks, maybe months, that didn't reek of rust, piss, or despair. She sat still in her chair as Rhett moved about the room, peeling off his outer armor layer with practiced ease. The faint hiss of pressure release echoed softly as he unlocked the chest plate and dropped it with a thud beside the bed. I can sleep on the floor, he said, without looking back at her, unstrapping a wrist guard. You'll take the bed. Sierra blinked. I don't, not a debate. His voice carried no edge, just finality. She bit her lip and looked away, unsure how to process the sudden care. No Navaran would have made such an offer, not to someone like her, not anymore. As he worked, she glanced around the space again. Every object had a place. The bedding was military issue, crisp, clean. On the shelf above the small desk sat a battered photo frame. The image was old. Two people in Terran military garb, arms slung over each other's shoulders, grinning through bruised faces. You have family? She asked, surprising even herself. Rhett paused. Used to. He didn't elaborate. Silence returned, filled only by the soft hum of the filtration unit. After a few moments, Sierra broke it again. What about it? She asked quietly. He turned to face her. You already asked that. I need to understand. You risk trouble, command, politics, your career. Why take that risk for me? He stared at her a long moment, then sat down on the floor across from her, arms resting on his knees. When I was 12, he said slowly, there was a girl in my colony. Freight loader crushed her legs. She survived, but people stopped seeing her. Teachers stopped calling her name in class. Kids stopped inviting her out. It was like she disappeared, even though she was still right there, rolling past us in the halls. Sierra's throat tightened. I didn't do anything, Rhett continued. Just watched. I swore I'd never be that kind of person again. She nodded, absorbing his words. You're not. He gave a soft, humorless chuckle. Took me 20 years to prove it. There was a brief pause before he stood and walked over to the storage unit. He pulled out a fresh med kit, more advanced than the one he'd used earlier, and knelt beside her again. I'm going to clean those cuts properly now, he said. Some of them are already starting to inflame. She didn't flinch this time as he dabbed antiseptic on her bruises. His hands were steady, surprisingly gentle for a man who clearly spent most of his life with a rifle. You've done this before, she murmured, too many times. For comrades? For enemies too. Sometimes we forget the difference. Her gaze lingered on the faded scar that ran diagonally across his collarbone. You've been in real wars. All the ones no one writes about. She was quiet for a long moment. Then in a whisper, I was injured during a mine collapse. Faulty support beams. My spine, she swallowed. They said I drained resources, that I couldn't carry my weight. Bastards. Is it the same for humans? Do you abandon your weak? No, he said firmly. At least we try not to, not where I come from. She nodded slowly, unsure whether to believe him, but wanting to. Tomorrow, he said, finishing with her arm, I'll see about getting you proper treatment. There's a med facility in the embassy. No. Her voice snapped out sharper than she meant. No officials. He raised a brow. Why not? Because officials mean records, questions. Records lead to my clan. They'll come. They'll see interference, political consequences. They left you to die. They'll say otherwise, say I wandered, got lost. They'll spin a story. He frowned, clearly weighing options. No embassy, she said again, quieter this time. Please. He nodded slowly. Right, no embassy, but we'll figure something out. A visible weight lifted from her shoulders. She hadn't realized how tense she'd been until that moment. Thank you, she said again, voice barely above a breath. Rhett pushed himself to his feet and laid a sleeping mat on the floor. Get some rest, he said, stretching out beside the bed. We'll figure out next steps in the morning. The room dimmed as the twin suns dipped beneath the horizon. The temperature dropped quickly. Elysium's nights were bitter. Sarah pulled the thin blanket over her lap, shivering slightly. From below, Rhett wordlessly tossed up his jacket. She caught it, surprised, and tucked it over herself. Silence returned. Then softly, Rhett? Yeah. Was she ever okay, the girl in your colony? He was quiet for a long time. No, he said at last. She withered. Slowly, I left for basic training and never saw her again. Sarah looked down at her hands, twisting them in the jacket fabric. Then maybe this is her second chance, too. He didn't respond, but she could sense the change in the room. An energy, subtle and intimate, like a string pulled taut between them. As she drifted off to sleep, she wondered if perhaps, in this strange human's presence, she wasn't just surviving anymore. She was starting to feel seen. Chapter 3, Biochemistry of Hope. Rhett woke before sunrise, a habit too ingrained to shake. The first thing he registered was the quiet, peaceful and fragile, like a bubble that might burst with a single breath. The second was Sarah's soft, steady breathing from the bed above. He lay there for a moment, eyes tracing the patterns of light filtering through the shuttered window. Despite the heat of the coming day, the room was cool. Still, for the first time in a long while, he didn't feel like a soldier on alert. He rose quietly, muscles moving with the fluid economy of long practice, and activated the encrypted comm unit stashed in his personal locker. Elias, priority ping. The response came almost instantly, a small miracle. You never call unless it's trouble, came the familiar voice, dry and sharp. I need a favor. Medical. Off the books. A pause. How off the books are we talking? No questions. Portable gear. I'll owe you one. You already owe me 3. Then I guess I'll make it 4. Another pause, then a sigh. All right, your quarters, 0800. If this gets me court-martialed, I'm making you my defense witness. Rhett smiled. Deal. He ended the transmission and turned toward the bed, where Sarah was beginning to stir. Her violet skin shimmered faintly in the early light, an almost imperceptible glow, tracing the lines of her neck and collarbone. Not bright, but new. She blinked at him. Already awake? Old habits. He poured a cup of filtered water and brought it to her. Drink this. She sipped gratefully, eyes lingering on him as he moved about the room. You move differently, she said. He raised an eyebrow. Differently how? Like every motion is calculated, like a predator. I'm flattered. It wasn't a compliment. He chuckled. Fair enough. Before she could speak again, the door chime buzzed once, sharp and brief. Right on time, Rhett muttered. He opened the door to reveal a compact man in his early 40s, wearing a worn leather jacket over medical scrubs and carrying 2 heavy bags. Elias Monroe, he said, extending a hand to Sarah without waiting for introductions. You must be the reason Rhett called in one of the few favors I swore I'd never grant again. Sarah blinked, clearly unsure how to respond. Come in, Rhett said quickly, and shut the door fast. Elias stepped in and swept the room with sharp, clinical eyes before settling his gaze on Sarah. Vitals first, he said briskly, setting up a portable scanner. Then we'll talk about what the hell is happening to you. Sarah remained still as he moved the device over her spine and torso. The scanner whirred softly, projecting data into the air above it. Elias frowned. Neural conductivity is increasing, he murmured. Inflammation is receding, and hold on. He adjusted the frequency of the scan. The spinal damage, it's healing, he said, astonished. Sierra's breath caught. That's not possible. Apparently it is, Elias said. It's not just healing, it's accelerating. Rhett stepped forward. Could it be a natural recovery? Elias shook his head. No. Spinal trauma of this kind doesn't just reverse itself, not without major intervention. But there's something else here. He narrowed his eyes at the biometric overlay. Bioluminescent patterns. These don't match standard Navaran healing responses. Sierra's skin began to shimmer faintly again. The glow traced lines up her neck and across her temples. Has she undergone any bonding? Elias asked carefully. Rhett cleared his throat. We've grown close. Sierra turned to him, surprised and something else, something softer, flashing in her eyes. Define close, Asia said dryly. Sierra spoke before Rhett could. We shared physical connection. It was consensual. Elias blinked, then nodded slowly. That explains it. Explains what? Rhett asked. The neural signature in her body isn't purely Navaran anymore, Elias said, tapping at the scanner. There's a biochemical overlay. Yours. Sierra inhaled sharply. You mean, you're pair bonding, Cyan, Elias said. It's rare between species, almost unheard of, but your systems are syncing on a molecular level. Her body's interpreting your biology as a catalyst. A catalyst for what? For accelerated regeneration, repair, adaptation. Elias sat back on his heels. You didn't just help her emotionally, Rhett. You're literally helping her heal. Sierra was silent for a long moment, then very softly, I felt tingling this morning in my legs. I thought it was just the stimulators. It's not, Elias said. It's your nervous system rebooting. Rhett glanced at her legs, still motionless beneath the blanket. How long before she can walk? Could be days, could be hours. Depends on how fast the bonding continues. Elias rubbed his chin. But it comes with risk. The regeneration might outpace her system's ability to handle it. Neural overload, biochemical instability. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small injector. This will modulate the regeneration. Keep it steady, but it has to be done regularly. Sierra nodded. Elias looked between them. You two understand what this is, right? You're not just sharing a bed. You're rewriting her biology. Rhett's jaw tightened. We didn't plan it. No one ever does, Elias said. He packed his gear and paused at the door. Keep her calm, keep her hydrated, and keep her close. The bond needs proximity. Rhett nodded. When the door closed, silence filled the room again. Sierra looked down at her trembling fingers. My clan would see this as corruption. Then maybe your clan needs to be corrupted, Rhett said. She laughed softly, a real laugh this time. You are very human. I get that a lot. She turned toward him, eyes shining faintly in the low light. You gave me more than shelter, Rhett. You gave me back something I thought I'd lost. What? She reached out slowly, fingers brushing his. Hope. Chapter 4, Dangerous Truths. The stillness of the compound was shattered by a single sharp knock. Rhett looked up from where he was helping Sierra adjust her blanket. His instincts sharpened immediately. Military muscle memory honed by years in volatile territories. He stepped to the door and keyed the view screen. Commander Riggs. Damn. Rhett exhaled slowly, forcing calm into his voice. Come in, sir. The door slid open to reveal the imposing figure of Commander Malcolm Riggs. Broad-shouldered, granite-faced, and exuding that particular kind of authority that never needed to raise its voice to be terrifying. He entered without waiting for invitation, eyes scanning the room with practiced efficiency. His gaze landed on Sierra for only a second, long enough for her to freeze, then shifted to Rhett's unmade sleeping mat, the discarded med kit, and the half-sealed storage crate filled with diagnostic tools. Riggs didn't speak for a moment. Then, care to explain why embassy inventory shows you've requisitioned medical supplies 3 times this week? Rhett's face remained unreadable. Restocking my field kit. Standard protocol. And Dr. Monroe's renewed interest in Navaran physiology? Rhett shrugged. Elias has always been a nerd. Riggs narrowed his eyes. Don't insult my intelligence, Carson. You've been skipping meals, changing schedules, making encrypted comms outside designated windows. Your quarters are under observation starting tomorrow. The chill that ran through Rhett wasn't from fear, it was calculation. They'd planned to move Sierra to the medical facility in 2 days. That window had just closed. I understand, sir, he said, voice even. Riggs stepped closer, arms folding. This isn't about supplies. The Navaran embassy filed a report yesterday. Disabled female, presumed missing. Local authorities launched a quiet search. Given our strained diplomatic ties, security wants to make sure no humans are involved. He stared straight into Rhett's eyes. Know anything about that? Rhett didn't blink. No, sir, but I'll keep my eyes open. A long pause. Riggs studied him, then finally nodded once. Dismissed. The door slid shut behind him. Silence held for a beat. Then Rhett sponged towards Sierra. We're out of time. She was already gripping the edge of the bed, trying to sit upright. Sweat beaded her forehead. Her face was drawn in pain. What are you doing? He asked, rushing to her side. Testing limits, she gasped. I felt something this morning, tingling. Her legs trembled violently. Rhett reached out, steadying her before she collapsed. That's the neural stimulator working. You're pushing too hard. It's the first time I've felt anything in months, she whispered, voice trembling. I need to know it's real. He gently helped her back into the chair. She looked up at him, her violet eyes swimming with emotion. You're risking everything for me. Why? Rhett knelt in front of her, taking her hand in both of his. Because you matter. Not just because of what's happening to your body, but because of who you are. She swallowed hard, clearly fighting tears. My clan, they filed a missing persons report. Probably to cover their own shame, he said bitterly. They can't admit they left you to do, so they spin it. We lost track of her. Makes them look better. She laughed, bitter and hollow. Convenient fiction. He stood and activated the private comm. Elias, plans moved up. Tonight. A pause. Then Elias responded, voice grim. Understood. I'll meet you at the service entrance at midnight. Bring the portable scanner. Rhett turned to Sierra. I'll prep gear. We leave after sundown. She looked down at her lap, fingers twitching. There is more, she said, voice low. You should know. He turned. In Navaran culture, she continued slowly, offering protection, real physical protection, creates a life debt, a bond. He raised an eyebrow. That's not why I'm helping you. I know, she said, meeting his gaze, but it changes how I see you. He opened his mouth to respond, but she reached out and placed her hand on his arm. Her touch was light, yet the sensation that flared between them was undeniable. Electric, immediate, visceral. There's something else you should understand, she said softly. When we Navarans bond, it's not just emotional. It's physical, biological. Our systems harmonize. His pulse jumped. Harmonize? Neural pathways align. Biochemistry shifts. It's irreversible. Rhett took a slow breath. Are you saying you're changing? I already am, she said, fingers now brushing the line of his jaw. And so are you. He stared at her, heart thudding. I've never, he began, been with someone not human. She offered, a small smile playing at her lips. Perhaps it is time to expand your experiences, Marine. Their lips met in the next breath. It wasn't urgent, not yet, it was exploration. A deep, resonant connection that bypassed words entirely. Her skin sparked where it touched his, faint glows rippling like stardust across her shoulders. His fingers trembled as they trailed along her spine, feeling every nuance of her trembling form. When they finally separated, breathless and flushed, Sierra whispered, "Among my people." That was the first true step toward knowing. Rhett smiled faintly. We humans have a word for that too. We just usually wait longer than a day. When she laughed, soft, free, radiant. Outside, the second sun of Elysium dipped beyond the horizon, casting long purple shadows across the embassy walls. Inside, two lives had already shifted course, on a trajectory none of them could predict, but both were ready to follow. Chapter 5. Into the dark, the last light of Elysium's twin suns bled away behind the scorched ridgelines, painting the sky in swirls of ash and violet. Rhett Carson stood at the window of his quarters, checking the compound's patrol schedule one last time on his datapad. His jaw was clenched, pulse steady, but his gut coiled with tension. Behind him, Sierra pulled the hood of her maintenance jumpsuit over her head, hiding most of her distinctive features, though there was little either of them could do about the faint luminescence pulsing beneath her skin. "You ready?" he asked, glancing over his shoulder. "I should ask you," she said, adjusting the sleeves to cover her glowing forearms. "You're the one risking your entire career." He stepped closer, tightening the cloak around her shoulders. "Some things are worth more than a uniform." She stared at him for a beat, and then gave a small nod. "Then let's go before we overthink this." They moved quickly through the narrow corridors of the compound. Red had memorized every blind spot, every glitchy camera feed. They stuck to the shadows, slipping through service passages like ghosts. Sierra's wheelchair had been replaced by a compact hover chair he'd modified with silent stabilizers and heat dampeners. It glided noiselessly a few inches above the ground, and though she still couldn't walk, she moved more freely than she had in months. At the edge of the compound, near the maintenance bay, a figure waited in the gloom. Elias Munro stood hunched in a utility coat, holding a med scanner in one hand and a compact case in the other. He looked up as they approached, eyes narrowing at Sierra. "You're glowing brighter," he muttered. "That's not a good sign." "I feel strange," Sierra admitted. "Define strange. Like there's heat running through my bones, pressure in my spine, and it's getting worse." Elias hissed under his breath. "We need to get you stabilized. Come on." They moved swiftly through the outer gate, bypassing the internal checkpoints via an emergency override Rhett had pre-programmed into the system earlier that week. The corridor beyond was dim, lit only by pulsing red emergency strips that gave everything a blood-soaked hue. Just as they rounded the final corner toward the service exit, Sierra gasped. Her body arched suddenly in the hover chair, hands clutching her abdomen. Her skin began to shimmer violently, bioluminescent patterns blooming beneath the surface like electric vines. "Sierra?" Rhett crouched beside her. "What's happening?" I don't know," she panted. "It's spreading. I can't control it." Elias quickly activated the scanner, his face tightening as he read the data. "Her neural regeneration is spiking. The bonding effect, this ain't nothing. It's accelerating uncontrollably." "Is it dangerous?" "To her. Potentially fatal. To anyone nearby?" Elias glanced at Rhett. "Well, if her body starts broadcasting high-frequency pulses, yes." "Damn it," Rhett muttered. "We have to move now." Before they could continue, a figure stepped out of the corridor ahead, armed, uniformed, and unmistakably alert. "Security checkpoint," the man barked, hand dropping to his sidearm. "Halt." Rhett froze. Sierra's glow dimmed slightly, as if reacting to his sudden tension. Then the security officer's face registered recognition. "Steele?" The man blinked. "What the hell?" "Lieutenant Rusk," Rhett said calmly, identifying the younger officer. "This isn't what it looks like." "Pretty sure it's exactly what it looks like," Rusk replied, eyes flicking between them. "You're smuggling a glowing alien female through a restricted zone. She needs medical attention," Rhett said. "Emergency situation." Rusk hesitated, then Navarran authorities filed an alert. "Missing clan member. Disabled." "Sound familiar?" "They abandoned her to die," Rhett said flatly. "Now they want her back to save face." Something in his tone must have cut through the tension. Rusk's stance shifted, his training at war with his conscience. "Medical facility?" he asked. Rhett nodded. "Monroe's prepping treatment." Rusk sighed, then gestured with his weapon. "You're officially detained for questioning. I'm escorting you to medbay for evaluation before processing." Rhett blinked in surprise. "You're serious?" Rusk cracked a faint grin. "You owe me one, Steele. Big time." Together they moved through the corridor, Rusk taking point, Elias and Rhett flanking Sierra. She trembled in her hover chair, barely keeping conscious, the glow beneath her skin pulsing like a second heartbeat. Inside the medical facility's service entrance, Elias immediately guided them into a private treatment chamber and activated isolation protocols. As Rhett gently lifted Sierra onto the diagnostic bed, the lights flickered from the energy discharge around her body. "Her systems are outpacing themselves," Elias muttered, watching the scanner. "We need to stabilize her or she's going to burn out her nervous system." He prepared an injector and looked to Rhett. "Hold her still." Sierra whimpered as the medication entered her bloodstream. Her glowing patterns flared, then slowly, almost reluctantly, began to fade into softer, rhythmic tracery beneath her skin. Her breathing eased. "Better," she whispered, voice fragile but steady. Red exhaled, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "You scared me," he said quietly. "I scared myself." They sat there in silence for a while, the sterile hum of equipment grounding them. Outside, Rusk waited with one eye on the corridor, buying time they didn't have. Finally, Sierra broke the silence. "When you held me, when the pain was at its worst, it lessened." He met her eyes. "Your presence, it balances me. We're not just bonded, Rhett. We're merging." He swallowed. "You're not alone anymore, Sierra." She nodded, tears glimmering in the corner of her eyes, not from pain this time, but from something else. Relief, connection, hope. Chapter 6, Between Borders. The medical facility hummed with quiet urgency. Rhett paced the narrow examination room while Elias monitored Sierra's vitals, his face drawn in concentration. The stabilizing agent had subdued the dangerous flare of neural activity, but the glow beneath Sierra's skin still shimmered in undulating patterns, like bioluminescent ink trapped just beneath the surface. "How long until we can move her?" Rhett asked. "Depends on the neural response," Elias replied without looking up. "She's stable, but it won't last forever. Her body is in a regenerative overdrive state." "Then we move now," Rhett said. Before Elias could answer, the facility's overhead lights flickered once. Then again, a warning chime echoed from the hallway. Rusk's voice came over the intercom, sharp and clipped. "Security sweep heading your way. 2 minutes. Commander Riggs authorized full facility lockdown." "Damn it," Rhett muttered, spinning to Elias. "We don't have time." "I know." Elias snapped his fingers and pointed to a sealed door in the corner. "Isolation chamber, designed for xenopath containment, shielded from thermal and biometric scans. It'll hide both of you, for a little while." "We're both going in? You're not leaving her now, are you?" Rhett didn't respond. Instead, he moved to Sierra's side and lifted her gently from the exam bed. Though her body still trembled with weakness, she clung to his shoulders, her arms laced around his neck as if it were the only stable thing in her universe. The isolation chamber was small, sterile, and dimly lit. As the door sealed with a soft hiss, they were left in near darkness, illuminated only by the faint blue glow radiating from Sierra's skin. Her patterns pulsed softly, along her arms, collarbone, cheeks, like a living constellation. Rhett helped her settle onto the narrow medical bench that lined the wall. It wasn't much wider than a cot, but it was enough for the two of them to sit shoulder to shoulder. "I'm sorry," Sierra whispered, breaking the silence. "This wasn't what I wanted for you." "You didn't drag me into this," Rhett replied. "I walked in, eyes open. I didn't know what would happen. This bond, the changes, the danger. You think I care?" He turned to face her fully. "You were discarded like trash by the people who should have protected you. You think I'm walking away from that?" Her eyes welled, glowing faintly. "You should." He reached out, brushing his thumb beneath her eye. "Not a chance, Warren." Her lips parted, but whatever she was about to say dissolved as the weight of his touch settled over her. The electric sensation returned, stronger now. Where their skin touched, a spark flared, spreading through her limbs and into his fingertips like a magnetic pull. Sierra's breath hitched. "It's happening again." Rhett didn't let go. "Let it." She turned toward him, her face mere inches from his. "In my culture," she said, voice trembling, "this kind of connection, it's sacred, intense, permanent." "So is loyalty," he whispered. Their lips met again, but this time it wasn't tentative. It was a surrender, an ignition. As their mouths found each other, the glow on Sierra's skin erupted in vibrant lines, flowing down her neck, curling along her arms like vines reaching for the sun. Her fingers slid beneath Rhett's shirt, palms pressed against his chest, tracing the contours of muscle with reverence. His skin tingled where she touched him, like the bond had awakened his nervous system to her presence, tuning him into a frequency only she could transmit. "You feel it, don't you?" she breathed. He nodded, chest rising and falling with ragged breaths. "I've never felt anything like it." Sierra's patterns glowed brighter with his response. "Neither have I." Outside the chamber, muffled voices and boot falls echoed. The security sweep was moving closer. But within their small, sealed world, time bent, slowed, compressed into the single space between heartbeats. Rhett pulled her close, forehead resting against hers. Whatever happens next, we face it together. Her fingers found his hand and intertwined tightly. Together. Minutes ticked by. Footsteps past the door, paused, then faded. Finally, Elias's voice crackled through the comm unit embedded in the wall. Sweeps moved on. You're in the clear. For now. The chamber door hissed open. Cool, sterile air spilled in, and Rhett stepped out first, helping Sierra to follow. But she was already moving, slowly, unsteadily, but under her own power. Her feet touched the ground with hesitant grace, and she stood upright, eyes wide in disbelief. I can feel them, she whispered. I can stand. Elias rushed forward with his scanner. Unbelievable. The neural reconnection is stabilizing. Her nervous system isn't just healing, it's evolving. Rhett stared, awe and something deeper swelling in his chest. Sierra stood tall, wobbly, glowing, trembling, but standing. Her patterns had shifted, no longer chaotic or flaring, but flowing with calm intention, like rivers of light across her skin. I'm not the same, she said, her voice hushed with wonder. I'm becoming something new. You're becoming yourself, Rhett said softly, the person they were too blind to see. Sierra turned to him, and the moment was so quiet, so powerful, that even Elias stepped back and let them have it. Then another alert chirped from the console. Elias frowned. Security logs show flagged anomalies. Riggs is running a full sweep. We've got maybe 20 minutes before this place is locked down. Then we're gone before that happens, Rhett said, already grabbing the med kit in Sierra's cloak. Sierra looked at the door, then at her legs. I want to walk, she said, even if it hurts. He hesitated. Please, she added. He gave her a nod, wrapped an arm lightly around her waist for support, and together they stepped into the corridor. Not as fugitives, but as a bonded pair, equal parts fire and defiance, heading into a night that had no promises but one. They would face it side by side. Chapter 7. Hunters and Harm. The embassy compound was ablaze with light, motion sensors flaring across corridors, alarms wailing distantly like a chorus of synthetic banshees. Security teams fanned out in full gear, scanning for anomalies with portable biometric arrays. The air crackled with tension, ripe with the promise of confrontation. Rhett and Sierra moved like shadows through the maintenance tunnels beneath the eastern quadrant. Elias had reconfigured the security protocols just long enough to grant them access through a forgotten sub-level used for cargo routing, an old, narrow shaft choked with dust and humming conduits. I can make it, Sierra whispered, breath coming in shallow bursts. You're pushing yourself too hard, Rhett muttered, adjusting his grip on her waist. I need to feel this, she insisted. Need to earn it. Despite the pain, the strain, the residual tremors from her transformation, Sierra moved forward with fierce determination. Her steps were unsteady, but her gaze never wavered. The luminescent patterns beneath her skin pulsed rhythmically, like a heartbeat etched in light. They emerged from the shaft into the vehicle bay. Rusk was already waiting, leaning against a compact transport skimmer, half covered in tarpaulin. Took you long enough, he said, tossing Rhett the ignition disc. Security sweep? Rhett asked. 2 minutes out. You've got to go, now. Sierra climbed into the passenger seat with Rhett's help. He secured the medical stabilizers Elias had packed and checked the nav map. Neutral zone's an hour out. More if we run dark. Stay off main transit lines, Rusk warned, and don't stop for anything. Once you're outside their jurisdiction, the Navarans can't claim you without diplomatic red tape. Rhett clasped his arm. Thanks, Damon, I won't forget this. You better not, Rusk said, then added with a grin, especially if they give you a desk job after this. The skimmer roared to life, its silent repulsors lifting them off the platform. As they shot into the night, the compound behind them erupted in activity, spotlights slicing through the dark, but always a few seconds too slow. The desert opened wide before them, miles of cracked earth under a canopy of stars. Sierra sat quietly, the light from her body casting a soft glow in the cockpit. Her face was pale but calm, eyes fixed ahead. You're remarkably composed for someone fleeing both governments, Rhett said after a while. When you've been discarded to die alone, everything after feels like borrowed time, she replied. He reached over and took her hand. She didn't flinch, just squeezed it, gently. I'm not alone anymore, she added. The silence that followed was warm, intimate. But it was broken a few kilometers from the neutral zone. Sierra gasped suddenly, her body curling forward. The glow from her skin intensified, brilliant and wild, casting the cockpit in vibrant azure. What's wrong? Rhett demanded, slowing the skimmer. Pain, spreading, she hissed, like fire under my skin. He landed the skimmer beside a derelict structure, an abandoned mining outpost from the early settlement era. Lifting her from the seat, he laid her down inside and administered the stabilizer. The glow subsided gradually. Her breathing slowed. Better? He asked. She nodded weakly. The pain accelerates the healing. It's changing me. And then just as suddenly she stood. Her legs shook but held. She took one step, then another. Around the room, slow, deliberate strides. I never thought I'd stand again, she whispered. Never thought I'd walk, or run, or dance. Rhett stared. Dance? She turned toward him, smiling faintly. We Navarans do dance, though maybe not like humans. She reached out her hand. He took it. In the pale blue light of her bioluminescence, they moved. Awkward at first, then slower, in sync. Not a real dance, not yet, but a promise of one. And then came the chime from the comm unit. Steele, this is Commander Riggs. Rhett froze. I know you're receiving. Respond. He exchanged a glance with Sierra before answering. How did you find this channel? Rusk's a good man, terrible liar. Didn't take much to break him. There was a pause. I'm in the neutral zone, coordinates following. Come alone. That's not happening, Rhett said. Fine, bring your Navaron, but come quickly. You're not the only ones looking for her. The transmission ended, replaced by a set of coordinates, 3 kilometers east. Sierra looked up, pale again. It's a trap. Maybe, Rhett admitted, but Riggs isn't subtle. If he wanted to arrest us, he'd have sent a gunship. Then what does he want? Only one way to find out. They arrived cautiously. The location was an old trading post, half collapsed but standing. And there he was, Commander Riggs, standing alone in the clearing. As they approached, he raised his hands. We've got company coming. What kind of company? Rhett asked. Navaran hunters, specialized retrieval unit. They're after her. Riggs turned to Sierra. Or more specifically, what she's becoming. Sierra's expression darkened. Her patterns flickered. Luminescent ascension, she said quietly. What? Rhett asked. It's rare. Biological evolution in Navarans. My clan suspected I carried the markers. So they arranged the mining accident to test me. She looked down. If I survived and ascended, I'd be valuable. If not, disposable. Rhett's hands curled into fists. Riggs handed him a datapad. They've done it before. Dozens of cases. Discarding their own to trigger this transformation. It's time someone exposed it. You want to use her as proof? Rhett said. I want to end this, Riggs replied, but we don't have time. 3 hunter ships inbound. Sierra stood straighter, her eyes glowing silver met Rhett's. We don't run, she said. He nodded. We make a stand. Riggs gave a tight smile. 2 Terran Marines, 1 Navaran Ascendant. Let's make history. Outside, the hunters were landing. Inside, 3 souls were prepared to defy a system that had long profited from silence. Chapter 8. Always shine. Set and shine, the old trading post creaked in the wind, its rusted beams groaning like a dying beast. Inside, Rhett, Sierra, the Commander Riggs moved swiftly, preparing what little defenses they could muster. There are 6 to 8 in a retrieval unit, Sierra said, pacing slowly despite the ache in her legs. Elite, precision-trained. Their job is not to kill, but to extract at all costs. So they'll come in fast, coordinated, Riggs muttered, checking the power level on his rifle. We can't outgun them, but we can outmaneuver. He turned to Rhett. Still remember how to rig non-lethals? Flash charges and signal disruptors, sure. Assuming we've got enough junk lying around. We do, Riggs replied, tossing him a utility satchel. Make them see what we want them to see. While Rhett set to work wiring old consoles into improvised traps, Syrah sat in the center of the room, removing the stabilizer patch from her shoulder. "What are you doing?" Rhett demanded. "If I withhold the treatment," she said, "my luminescence will intensify. They'll expect me to hide it. Instead, I'll become a beacon." Riggs raised an eyebrow. "You're using yourself as bait?" She looked up, calm and resolute. "They expect prey. Let's give them defiance." For a long moment, neither man spoke. Then Rhett knelt in front of her, cupping her cheek. "You don't have to prove anything." "I'm not proving," she said softly. "I'm choosing." He pressed his forehead to hers. "Then I choose to stand beside you." As darkness fell, the hum of incoming skimmers broke the silence. Through the cracked windows, they watched three sleek Navaran vessels descend in a perfect triangle around the outpost. Sleek and silent, their hulls shimmered like black chrome under the moons. Then came the voice, amplified, commanding. "Drara of Clan Varen, you are ordered to surrender for clan protection and medical examination. You have one chance." "Protection," Riggs snorted. "That's rich." Syrah rose slowly, her skin now pulsed with fierce, radiant patterns, casting the room in swirling blue light. "This is your choice," Rhett said. "We fight if you say so." Syrah turned to him, her voice firm. "I choose freedom. I choose you." Riggs gave a tight nod. "Time to make them regret this assignment." The first wave came silently, three Navaran hunters slipping through the ruins like phantoms. But they didn't expect the momentary flash burst to blind their vision, designed to detect low-spectrum light. They stumbled, giving away their position. Rhett fired first, non-lethal bolts that sent two crashing into old shelving. The third dodged, leaping through a side breach. From above, Riggs dropped a conduit panel square on his shoulders, knocking him unconscious. "Three down," Rhett said. "That's the easy part." The rest came hard, fast, organized, with energy nets and pulse blades. Syrah, standing in full light now, was a living flare. Her patterns danced wildly, stunning one of the attackers as he closed in. But just as the room threatened to collapse into chaos, an explosion of motion, light, and heat, a new sound ripped through the air. Engines. More ships, 5 of them, cresting the ridge. "Reinforcements?" Riggs barked, aiming his rifle at the sound. The ships descended, and from them poured a strange army. Humans, Navarans, even other species, many of them standing in pairs, couples, and many of the non-humans bore faint, familiar glows beneath their skin. Rhett blinked. "What the hell?" At the front of the group stood Lieutenant Rusk, grinning like a lunatic. "Told you I'd contact you when it was safe to return." Didn't say how. Beside him stood a Navaran woman with glowing silver eyes and a human woman whose skin shimmered faintly with violet tones. "We are not alone," the Navaran woman said, stepping forward. Syrah gasped. "Tella!" The woman nodded. "They discarded me too, for bonding with a human. I survived, and I found others." More voices followed. Names, stories, survivors, couples who had experienced transformations, less intense than Syrah's, but undeniably real. The lead hunter, confused and clearly outnumbered, hesitated. "This violates diplomatic protocol." "This," Riggs growled, activating a projection, "is evidence of experiments, discarded clan members, test cases for forced ascension. We have it all. You want to escalate this? Be our guest." The hunter faltered. "We will report to the council." "Do that," Riggs snapped. "Tell them the truth followed you here." As the hunters retreated, the strange militia began to cheer. Not loud, but full of something far more powerful than noise. Hope. Syrah turned to Rhett, eyes wide, lips trembling. "You were right, Shoenden. This wasn't just about me." He wrapped his arms around her. "It never was." From the edge of the crowd, Elias emerged, smiling softly. "Congratulations," he said. "You just started a movement." Chapter 9, From Burden to Bridge. The sun rose slowly over the neutral zone, casting pale amber light across the battered trading post in the scattered remnants of what could have been a battle, but wasn't. The air still crackled with residual tension, but the threat had passed. The Navaran hunters had withdrawn. Not out of mercy, but calculation. They had no leverage left. Inside the main hall, Rhett stood at a makeshift comm terminal, staring at the encrypted message on screen. Commander's note, negotiations pending, situation delicate, prepare statement, both of you. Riggs, across the room, Sierra leaned against a steel pillar, her legs still trembling from the night's exertion, but holding steady. Her luminescent markings had dimmed slightly, settling into graceful, flowing patterns that shimmered faintly with her breath and emotion. Around them, members of the unexpected coalition moved in quiet coordination, checking supplies, tending wounds, relaying communications. Couples of mixed species sat side by side, many still stunned by the sheer number of others like them. They weren't anomalies anymore. They were a movement. Red approached Sierra, holding a steaming metal cup. Still like the bitter human stuff? She smiled and took it with both hands. Tastes like rust and regret. I love it. He chuckled softly, then sat beside her. They want us to testify. I guessed as much. He hesitated. You don't have to. Riggs says we can disappear. New identities. Passage to the outer rim. Safe and quiet. Sierra sipped, then stared out at the horizon. That sounds easy. Too easy? Too small, she said. Rhett tilted his head. Say more. I was left to die in silence, she said quietly. I thought my voice didn't matter. That I was only worth what I could contribute to a mining quota. Her fingers traced the edge of the cup. But now, people are listening, watching, waiting for someone to speak first. She looked at him. Maybe that someone is us. He nodded slowly. All right, then we do it. Together. They spent the next 2 hours drafting their testimony with Riggs and Elias, assembling evidence, corroborating data, reviewing images, sensor logs, and biological reports. By midday, a temporary communication node was set up, transmitting a secure signal back to both human and Navaran embassies. And then the call came. A joint delegation, diplomatic officers from both species, was en route to the neutral zone for a formal hearing. 3 days. Location, the abandoned mining town on the edge of the Eastern Ridge, now to be repurposed into the first interspecies cultural exchange center. Their story would be the foundation. Later that evening, Rhett found Sierra alone, standing under the alien sky, her arms outstretched as if embracing the stars. You all right? He asked, approaching. I keep thinking this is a dream, she murmured, and I'll wake back in that broken chair. Skin bruised, voice ignored. He wrapped his arms around her from behind. If this is a dream, then I'm not waking up either. She leaned into him, the now familiar current between them flickering like a second heartbeat. Do you realize what this means, Rhett? If we speak, they'll study us, dissect every word, every gesture, maybe even our DNA. I know. They might call us unnatural. They might, he agreed, but they'll also hear the truth. She turned to face him, voice trembling. I'm afraid. So am I, he admitted, but that doesn't mean we run. The following morning, the delegation arrived. Sleek skimmers emblazoned with diplomatic insignias touched down just outside the compound. From them emerged not only ambassadors, but scientists, medical observers, cultural liaisons. The air bristled with pressure. Every look, every movement, measured and watched. Sierra stepped forward first, radiant even in her nervousness. Rhett moved beside her, unarmored but not unready. Together they entered the assembly hall of the makeshift town center, now transformed into a hybrid courtroom and press venue. The hearings lasted hours. Rhett described the moment he found Sierra, the decisions he made, and the growing connection between them. Elias supported it with medical data, showing the biochemical synchronization and accelerated healing. Other couples added their voices, each one a small miracle of survival, proof that Sierra's case wasn't an isolated miracle, but part of something larger. Then came Sierra's moment. She stood before the council table, glowing softly beneath her diplomatic robe. Silence stretched as she gathered her voice. My name is Sierra of Clan Veyron, she said. I was abandoned for being injured, for being a burden. She paused, letting the words echo. But I did not die. I did not disappear. I bonded with someone outside my species, and through that connection, I healed. A ripple moved through the room. I am not broken. I am not alone, and I am not ashamed. No one interrupted, no one dared. After the final statement, the tribunal recessed for deliberation. The crowd dispersed in hushed awe, whispers turning into quiet discussion. But the air had shifted. Less weight, more light. Back in their quarters that night, Rhett watched Syrah move with newfound confidence. She danced slowly to a song hummed from memory, her feet barefoot on the polished steel floor. "I don't think I ever said thank you," she said, twirling toward him. "For what?" "For seeing me, Seeing me," she said simply. "For helping me find my voice again." He pulled her close. "You didn't need me to find it. You just needed someone to listen." Their kiss was soft, familiar, transformative. Tomorrow the world would know their names. But tonight, under the stars of a neutral sky, they were just two people who had chosen each other, against odds, against politics, against centuries of prejudice. No longer a burden, but a bridge. Chapter 10. A new dawn, 3 months later. The first rays of morning spilled across the wide plaza of the Interspecies Cultural Exchange Center, a newly constructed facility nestled in the neutral zone between Terran and Navaran space. Once an abandoned mining town, it now pulsed with life, light, and a cautious hope. Flags of both nations flanked the entrance, along with the silver-white emblem of the new alliance. Two hands, one human, one alien, interwoven around a glowing arc. Inside, Rhett Carson stood before a transparent display, reviewing the day's agenda. A delegation from Earth arriving at 0800, a joint workshop on cross-species communication at Busan, and a press conference at midday, featuring, of course, them. He exhaled. "This is still weird," he murmured to himself. Behind him, footsteps echoed, light, precise, and somehow musical. Syrah entered the room wearing a flowing garment of soft silver that shimmered with the same bioluminescent patterns still alive beneath her skin. She moved with fluid grace, every step purposeful. Gone was the girl hunched in a broken wheelchair, voice barely more than a whisper. In her place stood a woman radiant with power and peace. "You look good in diplomatic hero mode," she teased. "I feel like I should be back in armor." "You are," she said, wrapping her arms around his waist from behind. "Just a different kind." He smiled and turned to face her, brushing a stray strand of hair from her cheek. "Are you nervous about the delegation?" "I've already spoken in front of two governments," she replied, smirking. "I think I can handle a few curious Terrans." "You're not just handling them," Rhett said. "You're inspiring them." They stood in silence for a moment, letting the morning light pour in through the high windows. The exchange center bustled quietly outside, with human and alien staff preparing for the day's ceremonies. Among them were several other bonded pairs, proof that what had happened between Rhett and Syrah was no longer considered anomaly, but evolution. Syrah pulled him toward the open balcony. "Come with me. There's something I want to show you." They stepped outside into the soft dawn air. Below, in the center courtyard, a group of young Navaran children moved in slow, deliberate steps, led by a human instructor and a Navaran elder. It was a dance, simple, elegant, echoing old traditions. "Familiar?" Syrah asked. "It's the one you showed me," Rhett said, brow lifting. She nodded. "We're teaching it here, together, as a symbol." He stared down at the scene, something warm stirring in his chest. "They're dancing in peace. They're dancing in hope," she corrected gently. Rhett turned to her, emotion rising. "Do you ever miss who you were, before all this?" "No," she said, "because who I was wasn't broken. I was just unseen." He nodded. "And now?" "Now I'm seen," she whispered. "And more importantly, I see back." Their lips met in a quiet kiss, not urgent, but deep with memory. Around them the wind stirred, gentle and warm. Her patterns brightened at his touch, like they always had, pulsing in sync with his heartbeat. A chime sounded from inside. "The Terran delegation has arrived," the console voice informed. Rhett exhaled and looked to Syrah. "Ready to be a diplomat?" She grinned. "As ready as I'll ever be." They moved back inside, hand in hand. The grand hall had been prepared meticulously, polished steel floors, a central podium, and seats arranged in concentric circles around a raised platform. Rhett recognized some faces among the delegation: senators, scholars, former military brass. But it was the crowd's reaction to Syrah that struck him. The room quieted, not out of tension, but reverence. She stood in front of the microphone and paused, letting the stillness settle. I was once discarded, she began, but now I stand not just healed, but transformed. Her voice rang with clarity, not because I was rescued, but because someone saw me, not as a burden, but as a bridge between fear and understanding, between survival and belonging. She gestured to the crowd. We are not anomalies. We are the beginning of something new, not perfect, but possible. And from this moment forward, we will no longer hide. The applause was thunderous. Later that night, Rhett and Sierra stood once again beneath the stars, overlooking the exchange center they now helped lead, a place that didn't exist before their bond lit the way. Sierra leaned into him, her head resting against his chest. Do you think we'll be remembered? She asked. I hope so, Rhett said. But if not, that's okay too. Why? Because we changed something, and the people who come after us, they'll change more. She smiled, her glow warming the air between them. Burden no more, Dahoan. Never again, he whispered, and kissed her under the starlit sky of a world they now called home. Together, from a forgotten outpost to the heart of a revolution, Rhett and Sierra's journey proved that across stars and species, love, courage, and connection can rewrite destiny. If you believe that no one is a burden when they are truly seen, drop A in the comments. And if this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Beyond the Stars, where impossible stories come to life and every heartbeat echoes across the universe. We'll see you again soon in another story among the stars, where every soul matters.